What do I do? Hi, I'm Sam.
I'm Jason.
And this is DORKWALKS. This is the first episode of our vlog slash visual podcast
Slash half-baked experiment.
slash hopefully we'll get better with age. But we are going to hike and talk about nerdy things like movies and video games and music and design and art and
Comic books, if I have my way.
yes, comic books, stuff like that. I am a filmmaker. I live in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, where we are currently, and I grew up in Mid-Coast, Maine. Always was into kind of nerdy things, but always consider myself kind of a low-level, like, you know, cool nerd. Not that I'm cool, but, you know, I was into, this is gonna sound really cool now. I was very, like, middle school, my friends and I were kind of a weird group where we were, you know, lived in rural Maine, very into Dungeons and Dragons, very cool, of course, but also, like, we were all skateboarders and listened to a lot of hip-hop and you know, music I actually still like to this day. So kind of a strange, you know, mix with trying to skateboard on dirt roads. You know, there's nowhere to skate. We ended up mostly just sort of playing D&D in the woods, where we just wailed on each other with sticks and, you know, made our own cloaks in my friend's mom's basement on her sewing machine.
That's next level. That's
yeah,
some serious nerd cred.
Yes. So I find myself, I have a great affinity for nerdy things, but I also find nerdy things very hilarious as well. I went to art school and studied film and animation, and now I'm a filmmaker, do mostly live action stuff, not a ton of animation anymore. But Jason and I met in a screenwriting group that he started here in Portland, Maine, and that's kind of where our friendship began.
Thanks for the segue.
Sure.
I moved to Maine about 7 years ago, and at the time I was doing some screenwriting in addition to my real day job as a designer and an art director. I moved from Brooklyn, New York, where I spent 17 years. But I was in a great screenwriting group in New York, and I wanted to kind of replicate that here in Maine. Mm-hmm. So I started a screenwriting group, and that's where Sam and I met, and we realized pretty early on that we had a lot of crossover nerd interests.
Yes.
You know, movies, comic books, what else? Those are the two biggies, but also avid readers.
Right.
A lot of book stuff.
And kind of art and design stuff as well.
Both art school nerds, yeah. So there was a lot of crossover there, and we started hanging out, working on some projects together, and we just finished a first short film together, which I'm pretty proud of. I think it turned out pretty great.
Yeah, me too.
So we're excited about that. We wanted to continue our creative journey here, and this kind of emerged kind of organically. Like, we both like to hike, and we both like to talk about nerdy shit, so it seemed like a natural. So we'll see how it goes.
That's why we live in Maine, right? You know, like, in addition to all the nerdy stuff, we both like, well, you're a much better surfer than me, but we both like the ocean and surfing and hiking and, you know, just enjoying the, you know, the beauty that Maine has to offer. And it's just like, I mean, I could have walked to this hike from my house. I drove because I was running late, but, you know, everything is just at our fingertips here. It's really pretty impressive. So we thought, initially we talked about doing an audio podcast for this, like, hey, why don't we just, you know, kind of shoot the shit about, you know, talking movies and, you know, stuff like that. But when we were sort of writing and planning the filming of our short film, you know, one way that I think we both like to brainstorm is to, like, take a walk in the woods, and it just kind of, you know, lets your mind open up and new ideas kind of flow in. And so we've had actually some brainstorm sessions for, you know, planning our short film and stuff, and planning this podcast where we said, hey, let's just go meet at this trail and just sort of do a walk and talk. And while we were doing that, talking about what could this podcast be, I was like, oh, hey, we could, like, this could be the podcast right here. You know, we should bring a little camera and, you know, kind of inspired by Kevin Nealon and his Hiking with Kevin YouTube channel. We figured that would be kind of a fun a fun way to showcase a new hike around the area and talk about a new film or, you know, game or comic book or novel or whatever.
Also, I'd say with COVID going on right now, there's so many people probably trapped inside their houses, and we have kind of the luxury of here in Maine, the population density is low, so you can still kind of go outside without getting too many dirty looks.
We have our masks just in case, you know.
Or worrying about our masks. But it might be nice for people to just be able to kind of take a virtual walk with someone in the woods.
True. If
they're trapped in their one-bedroom apartment in some urban environment. So one of the things we decided to do based on some of the podcasts we like and email newsletters that I like is a feature called Current Obsession we're going to try. It's basically talking about something that we're kind of into right now, or just kind of like nerdy passions of the moment. So just to get right into it, I'm going to go super deep on the nerd stuff. I even brought a visual cue here.
What?
My latest obsession is Maju's magic mushrooms. And it probably sounds a little crazier than it is. It's nothing psychedelic. But I am like an advocate of like healthy stuff and supplements, especially the older I get. So I follow guys like Paul Stamets, who's like a real mushroom aficionado, and I've experimented with some other mushroom products in the past, namely for Sigmatic. They make some pretty good stuff. It's kind of expensive, but pretty high quality. One of the things Paul Stamets always cautions about when you get into mushroom stuff, mushroom culture, a lot of fun guy jokes, is to watch, if you're buying stuff on Amazon, you got to watch where the mushrooms are sourced. Because a lot of that stuff comes from China, and I guess the soil, there's a high level of toxicity in the soil in a lot of regions in China. But apparently this place, I should have looked. I don't know where they make it, but I did look into it, and they say they farm their mushrooms all organically here in the States.
Nice.
With no GMOs or anything like that. But yeah, the mix that they use is like cordyceps, lion's mane, reishi, and chaga.
Okay.
So I put it in my coffee in the morning, usually the second cup.
So you make like regular coffee and you add this?
Yeah, just a little scoop. Comes with a scooper, so you get the right amount. And I found that it just really jazzes me up in the morning, like really sharpens my mental focus. I've been doing a lot more sketching and writing in the morning since COVID. My work's been a little slow, so I've been trying to do some other creative stuff. And I just found that this stuff just really fires up, gets the old neurons firing in the morning. I really, really like it. Usually just one cup, I don't go crazy with it, but and it does change the flavor of the coffee a bit, so I usually do it on the second cup. Tastes a little more nuttier and earthy, but it's not it's not bad.
Right.
It's just, but anyway, I love it. Highly recommend it. Give it a shot if you're into weird mushroom stuff.
So how does it? So this is like I don't know anything about weird mushroom stuff. I've heard of the Four Sigmatic from Chase Reeves, who's a YouTuber who does like bag reviews, because I'm kind of mildly obsessed with like backpacks and just general bags, and he does like all kinds of crazy in-depth reviews. I've like watched some of his stuff to like figure out what kind of travel luggage I want to get, but he talks all about.
I didn't know there were bag celebrities.
Oh my god, yeah, he's cool. Like the bag guy.
All right.
But yeah, he always talks about the Four Sigmatic and the mushroom type stuff and the chaga. So, but
they're big
don't
in
really
the
know what it's
podcast
for.
world. They do a lot of promoting, a lot of advertising on podcasts. So I think that's kind of why people are kind of
hoping to get a sponsor.
Catching, that'd be nice, but I'm not fishing. Just doing it out of hopefully bettering people's morning rituals.
Well, my current obsession is I'm reading a book right now called Thin Air by Richard K. Morgan, who's an author that I love. He's a British author, most famous for Altered Carbon, which is a book I read a long time ago and is one of my kind of all-time favorite sort of cyberpunk, dark, nerdy, noir type deals. And a lot of people know it probably now from the Netflix show, which I found to be okay, pretty good. I liked the first season. I thought it did the book justice pretty well, but didn't like blow my mind. I started watching season 2. It was kind of just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is his new book, and it's not really connected to Altered Carbon, or if it is, it's set in a much different time period. It's a little bit of a sort of like hard sci-fi meets cyberpunk meets kind of a detective noir thing again, police procedural.
It's strange how well noir works with the cyberpunk world.
Yeah.
It just kind of blends right in.
Well, it's just kind of like, you know, cyberpunk is like, I mean, it's such a stupid word, cyberpunk, but I love, I'm a big William Gibson fan and you know, Neil Stephenson fan. And, you know, I've loved that kind of genre since middle school. And, I don't know, just the kind of dark, computery, gritty future has always spoken to me more than like, you know, spaceships and stuff. So in this book, there's kind of all these, humanity has colonized Mars and has done it a while ago. So they have like a pretty set up society there and like, you know, big cities and whatnot. And there's just all kinds of, you know, big corporations kind of ruling everything. But it's kind of a murder mystery slash, you know, Big Brother trying to figure out like what the hell's going on with, you know, Earth oversight on Mars and overthrowing regimes and stuff like that. So
I bet there's a bad corporation in there somewhere, right?
There is, but it's not super tailored. It's not super focused on that. He's a really good writer, and one of the reasons I like, you know, this book in particular. I'm not quite done with it, but I'm about 3/4. It's one of those things where, you know, it throws the reader into this kind of crazy, different world. It's not, you know, the world as we know it. But there's not a lot of explaining. There's not a lot of, I mean, there's all kinds of world building that's happened sort of behind the scenes. And he kind of like slowly just lets these details kind of explain themselves over time as you familiarize yourself. Like at first you're kind of just like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is he talking about? Eventually you kind of just like piece it together. So he kind of throws you in the deep end.
It's kind of refreshing to have an author that actually thinks his audience is intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's not a fish out of water type story, so you're not sort of experiencing this new world through the character's eyes. He's kind of already disgruntled and salty and, you know, hardened and knows everything about it, so you kind of have to play catch up, which I find pretty enjoyable. And also works well in kind of a mystery format where you're trying to play catch up with the story, but you're also trying to play catch up on the sort of sci-fi world building elements of it. So. I think each episode we're going to, you know, introduce some of the things that we've been obsessed with, but the meat of the matter is going to be something that we've both watched or read or viewed or whatever, played, and we're going to kind of do a review where we talk about that. Usually Jason and I, we'd like have our nerd mandate and we'd like go to the movie theater and see action movies, you know, sci-fi, superheroes,
blockbuster bullshit.
Blockbuster bullshit.
Sci-fi.
Exactly. But, you know, we can't do that right now. So we decided to watch The King of Staten Island, one of those, like, can't believe it costs $20 to rent something at home type deals. But, you know, it's instead of going to the movie theater, I guess. So, yeah, so we watched that Judd Apatow's new movie with Pete Davidson.
My take was that everyone has seen that movie at this point because
Probably.
we're all stuck in isolation. So it's relatable.
Right.
It's very relatable.
And for those of you who haven't, this might help you decide if it's worth, you know, paying your hard-earned $19.99 plus tax to, you know, get 48 hours with this video file in your home.
Yeah, $20 is no joke, man. That goes a long way on some other formats.
I mean, I don't even usually buy movies unless they're on sale for like, you know, $5 or $7 or something.
Yeah,
so.
you can get a lot of comics for $20.
That's right.
A lot of digital comics.
Yeah.
So I'm I'm a full-on Apatow, big Apatow fan. I really think Apatow's films often remind me of like some of my favorite comedies of the 80s when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Comedies with heart, comedies with a story, comedies where you root for a protagonist and you kind of enjoy their process of changing and learning. So this was kind of interesting for me in the sense that there are biographical elements from Pete Davidson's real life. Apparently, his dad was a firefighter who died during 9/11 in the towers, and they changed the story so it wasn't that story, but it's a very similar storyline. One of the things I like the movie, so I'll go so far as to say that.
Yeah.
You're starved for a good film on a Friday night. I think this is worth $20 if you have somebody to watch it with. But I did kind of struggle with Pete Davidson's character the most. I liked all the supporting characters. I found to be very likable. But Pete Davidson's character, he changed. I don't think he really changed that much. And he was just really kind of like selfish and flawed, you know?
Right.
So that
and his character is, 80% of the movie or
he's
more,
kind of driving the story with all these kind of peripheral characters around him. I thought the supporting cast was great. I really liked Belle Polly as his girlfriend. Bill Burr, I think this might be one of Bill Burr's, biggest roles for sure. And I thought he just crushed it as
was great.
The transplant Boston firefighter who relocated to Staten Island. Marissa Tomei, everyone likes her always. Yeah. She's always great. And then I even thought some of there's an actor from New York that plays one of Pete Davidson's friends in the film, the one that he tattoos. He gives all the bad tattoos to. And that guy's great. I think Maud Apatow is in it as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I just kind of at the end I was a little like, man, I was kind of like, the only thing I could see that was really kind of Pete Davidson kind of changing it all was when he was walking the kids to school. He was kind of charming, and there was like really the only thing that he did for someone other than himself in the entire film. You know? But I still enjoyed it, having said all that.
Yeah. I liked it too.
There's something I kind of respect about it, like, Pete Davidson wrote it. And that he didn't kind of like turn it into this real big cornball-y thing, Like, he kind of is.
Right, he's not showing himself in really a flattering light at all.
Yeah, he's kind of like, this is how it was for me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with you. I think I watched it with my wife last night, and I don't know why I love Judd Apatow, but I didn't have like super high hopes. I don't know if it's just because it was like, hey, here's this new video on demand thing, and here's Pete Davidson with all his tattoos on the cover, and like. I like him fine. I think I've always been a big SNL fan in general. Not that it's usually even very good, but I just kind of love it. Like,
the tradition is great.
The tradition is great, and I've watched it since, everyone has their SNL generation, and mine is kind of the, from when I was, 12, 13 probably, was like Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Chris Farley, that. Kevin Nealon, that generation, which was one of the good ones, I think most people would agree. And so I've watched SNL for forever, and I find him funny on the show. Like, I like when he comes on the Weekend Update and kind of just is candid and kind of fucks up and laughs, and he's charming in that way. I like the Chad skits, of course.
The Chad skits are funny.
He's not like crazy funny. He's not in like that much stuff. So I guess I don't have a lot of Pete Davidson exposure. And then, of course, all the, the tabloid, his love life stuff with all these amazingly hot women that he's dated. And it's like, what? Who is this guy? What is the deal?
That's the interesting thing about Pete Davidson. He's kind of like, there's like a lot of crossover between his actual life and like his celebrity. And it's like, where does it end and the other guy begin, And it's kind of like this new 21st century phenomenon of like, just celebrities.
Right.
Or like, I don't know, it's weird. I saw him do stand-up in New York. Actually, I was in the front.
Oh.
I was actually in the front row. He was basically standing right over me.
Oh, nice.
And it's amazing I didn't get COVID. That was in that was in like March.
That was recently. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
it was last week. Yeah.
He's very different like, he looks kind of scrawny and weird on screen. He's like a real big, strapping 6'2" or 6'3" dude, like with perfect teeth, and like, he's much more physically imposing in person than he is on because he's got kind of weird posture on screen.
He's
kind of like kind of weird,
pale skin and dark circles under his,
But when he's on stage in front of you, he definitely feels more like a celebrity.
I could see that. I think for me, it's totally an unfair bias. It's kind of like I used to back when Matt Damon was first, you know, becoming hot shit. And I was like, Matt Damon is this like pretty boy with a bowl cut that all the ladies love. Like, what's so good about Matt Damon? No, I like fucking love Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Like, he's awesome. So, you know, it's unfair. But anyway, I feel like I came around, the early, like, you know, Rounders and Good Will Hunting.
Even Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. He kind of had the 90s, like, butt cut with the kind of like the big part. Looks like butt cheeks. But yeah, no, I feel like I kind of came around on Pete Davidson through this movie. I mean, he actually was pretty charming in his sort of weird, pathetic quirkiness. And I think in real life, I have more respect for Pete Davidson, like you said, for making a movie like this about himself, where he's not trying to glamorize anything. You know, it's kind of a personal, heartfelt story that shows off his flaws and his mental illness and his vulnerability.
I just thought the third act gets kind of funny when he like gets to the fire station.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to give too much away.
Right. Are we spoiling things here? That was another thing. Do we how in depth do we go into these reviews?
Maybe I shouldn't say, but there were a lot of, let's just put it this way. There were a lot of montages in the third act. Where I kind of felt like, it's almost like, well, we got to pack this in here now. We got to figure out how to make this guy likable.
Well, it's a long movie too.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was, I mean, maybe one of its biggest flaws, I thought, was, you know, it was kind of loose and organic in a way. I appreciate that. I think that's kind of signature Apatow style. But, you know, it seemed like, you know, it was over 2 hours. And I feel like for comedy, it seems like, you know, it could have shaved half an hour off somewhere.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel myself like, I didn't feel it dragging. You know, I didn't feel.
No, I didn't.
I wasn't looking at my watch. I wasn't like, when the hell is this going to be over?
I was amused.
Yeah. And I don't think, you know, this isn't the funniest Apatow film. And like, but I was amused and interested the whole time, I guess. You know, there were a few laugh out loud, you know, moments. Like some of the funniest things I think was like Bill Burr when he first comes over to yell at Marissa Tomei for, you know, Pete Davidson giving his, you know, 9-year-old son a tattoo. Yeah. You know, and he tells the kid like to, you know, go wait in the car or something, and the kid's like, fine. He's like, don't raise your voice at me. And then he's like, look both ways. And the kid's like, I am. And he's like, don't talk back or something like that. Just like rang so true with, you know, just.
Bill Burr steals scenes, which is crazy to me. Like even in the, not to divert, but even in The Mandalorian when he played that character, I was like, wow, Bill Burr, look at that guy acting his ass off.
Yeah. I also love when they're at that party, his sister's graduation party. It's some mud here. In the beginning of the film, and it was Pete Davidson's actual grandfather playing like the grandfather.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In it, yeah, and he's like saying like college is bullshit. And he's just naming all these bad people that went to college. It's like such a genius concept for a joke. Like college is bad because it's like pretty much everybody went to college.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like Cosby went to college. Trump, you know. It's a great argument why not to go to college.
Yeah, he just cherry picks like all the worst college graduates in history.
Yeah, I did like one thing I do want to say about like I feel like Judd Apatow comedies. You know, Okay, here's my take on like reviewing comedies. I feel like
give it to me. Lay it on.
All right, so you know, I like reading movie reviews. You know, I think it's a, you know, it's a service that these critics are doing, and I find them fascinating, especially after. I don't like to read a lot before I see a movie, but after I see something, I'll read a bunch. You know, kind of helps me process, you know, my own feelings about something. Yeah. But I feel like half the time, some of my favorite comedies have like abysmal reviews, and it's like either the comedy's kind of binary. It's like it makes you laugh or it doesn't, and if that's the, you know, if it's a super uproarious comedy like an Anchorman or something, you know, either it's like your favorite thing ever or you think it's stupid. And I feel like reviewers don't really know how to handle that usually, and like how to write. It's like they're too smart for their own good.
Well, it's so subjective.
It is,
it's
right.
So subjective. And a good reviewer, I think, should be able to like separate himself from that.
Yes.
Man, comedy's tough in that regard, I guess.
But I feel like with you know, Apatow movies, like they're not, some of them are like super hilarious or have at least some of the funniest moments, you know, in recent comedy cinema history, but you know, they're not like balls to the wall laugh fests. You know, they're not slapstick, they're not ridiculous. I appreciate that, you know, his filmmaking chops. I think like his films always look good. They look like a well-done indie movie, kind of like they're not trying too hard with the production values. Like they look natural. I feel like this was no exceptions. I don't know if it was shot on film or what, but it just has this just great natural, like the cinematography was great. I think it was, I think Robert Elswit, I want to say, talented cinematographer. And, you know, I just think technically these movies are very pleasing to me. He shows off the vibe of a new place to me. You know, Staten Island's not somewhere I've spent time in, you know.
Yeah. I felt the same way about that. I was like, oh yeah, this is what Staten Island's all about. Huh?
Right.
Like, interesting.
And he's not doing all these like gratuitous, you know, establishing shots or flyover scenes. You know, he's not overdoing it with like this is Staten Island, you know,
right,
but
right.
These are like real people inhabiting a real place, and I feel like he does a good job subtly kind of showing that off and inviting you into that world, which was cool. But yeah, I don't know, that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment.
Yeah.
I think that gives people enough ammunition to know if they want to drop $20 on
Yeah.
the movie.
Well, should we get into the boner alert section?
Should we skip it? I feel like we have so much video. Boner alert is something that does not yet exist, but it's something we're excited about that's
Right.
coming down the pike. So,
You have a nerd boner for it.
yeah, like
It's a conceptual.
yes, nothing sexual, nothing creepy. So we were talking about it, and I was telling him that I was getting a total boner alert because I saw the trailer for Foundation, which is that new Apple TV show. It's coming out, unfortunately, not until 2021, but
Yeah.
based on Isaac Asimov's books. And I just thought the trailer. I've been jonesing for the next Game of Thrones since Game of Thrones
Right.
ended. I really love to get in, you know, a deep dive into a show where like multiple characters with huge breadth and scale.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
there's not a lot of TV like that. I mean, you know,
People try, but it's hard.
Breaking Bad's great, but it's not. It doesn't have the breadth of like multiple worlds and you
Right.
know, decades of time pass. And
Right.
so I thought Foundation looks really promising in that regard. And
It looks amazing.
You look at the director. I think it's Rupert Sanders. I know he comes from like. I think he started off doing really slick car commercial stuff. So
Right.
really aesthetic, and then he moved into sci-fi.
Oh, we got a bike. Hey.
And then he moved into, I think he did Snow White and Huntsman.
Right.
Which is a pretty good look. I didn't love
Very,
the movie, but
right.
it was great
Very
looking.
stylish, yeah.
Great looking. What was the adaptation, the manga adaptation?
Oh, Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell,
Shell.
yeah,
Yeah, which looked like I was a huge Ghost in the Shell fan when that came out. And, I watched the movie first, the animated movie from like 95 or whenever that was from, and then later read the manga.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought like it was like visually, this new Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson was like visually super cool and like really captured the essence of that, you know, kind of future Tokyo cyberpunk.
Yeah, yeah. It's had a really stylized, cool look when those like samurai heads open up and there's that robot inside.
So
and,
creepy.
Yeah. But anyway, I just thought it looked epic and far-reaching, and I think it's the kind of show that like, I hate to say it, but I think Apple TV needs something like that to kind of get off the ground.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, the thing I'm excited about it, you know, for being on Apple TV Plus service is that I haven't seen all of their shows, but I feel like all the shows that I have seen from there, like Dickinson, Morning News, Trying. What else have I seen on there? I feel like there's been one or two other things.
What's Trying?
That's the it's a British. It's really good. It's a British series about a couple who sort of dealing with infertility and then kind of deciding to adopt.
Oh.
And kind of it's pretty short. You know, maybe like 8 to 10 half-hour episodes. It's really well filmed, really well acted, really well written. You know, it's a pretty honest look at, you know, a issue that a lot of people have to deal with, and it's very funny, but it kind of like an Apatow vibe. Like it kind of treats the subject matter with the right amount of respect, I think. Anyway, that was great. My point being is that like everything I've seen on that service looks amazing. Like it looks like a movie. as like a film nerd, I am always like bagging on shows or bailing on shows because like they don't look good enough. I think we've had these conversations.
Yeah, everything looks great on Apple TV. I think one of the things that I think they're going to have a real problem with is that they've kind of listed their raison d'etre is to make things that all have to be kind of like positive, and they can't be like a lot of swearing or sexual content. And they're real. I mean, I hate to say it, but you're kind of hamstringing yourself right from the jump if you're just going to make kind of, you know, Disney is going to kind of have that issue, but Disney now owns so many properties that they're slowly evolving away from that because they kind of have to. Apple doesn't have to, but you know, people eventually want some swearing, and they want
some butts.
Some butts.
So that was our show. Thanks for tuning in.
It's an experiment.
Yeah, to DORKWALKS.
They're with us.
I'm sure we'll have millions of followers right away that'll be giving us great ideas for what we can do for episode 2. So, you know, ideas are welcome. But yeah, we will try to feature a different hike each episode, and, you know, hopefully sort of in the background of our jibber jabbering, you'll see some of, you know, the natural splendor of the southern Maine coast. It's a pretty cool place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do like YouTube people do? Subscribe and hit that thing and the.
I don't know. Do we have that stuff?
I don't know. Probably not.
Next episode 2.
We're old.
Episode 2 will be way more polished.
All right.